Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. For many new head coaches, 2020 was just a practice year. And that was absolutely the case for Nick Rolovich at Washington State. The Cougars went just 1-3, but have now had a full season to install his run-and-shoot offense. And the Cougars will take a step forward in 2021. So again, guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, here to predict and analyze Washington State's schedule and record for this 2021 college football season. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, including those brand new expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Make sure to go check those out and sign up today before the season starts. Some of the best spread picks in the country for one of the lowest prices in the country. I promise you're not going to want to miss out on that offer. So we take a look at Washington State, guys. The Cougars, like we mentioned, went 1-3 last year. COVID ruined everything for everybody, especially with new head coaches trying to implement a new scheme, not getting a full schedule. They played 4 games, lost to Oregon, lost to USC, lost to Utah, some of the better teams in the Pac-12 last year. It wasn't ideal for a first-year head coach at his respective program. Things are going to be a little bit better, a little bit different in 2021. And it's all going to start, guys. The major success for Washington State is going to come on the offensive side of the ball. When Mike Leach left and he took his air raid offense down to Starkville at Mississippi State, we were all worried about how Washington State would adapt to a new coach who more than likely was not going to run the air raid. But they bring in Nick Rolovich, who runs a run-and-shoot offense, something that's a little bit different but very similar to an air raid type offense. And he has the players to utilize and has the players to put up solid offensive numbers in 2021. 8 starters back with Jayden de Laura in as their quarterback. Threw for 886 yards and 5 touchdowns. Won a couple state titles down in Hawaii with a run-and-shoot offense. Now, it should be noted that he was charged with a DUI back in the spring. Missed a good amount of spring ball. So the quarterback competition could be somewhat open with Cameron Cooper and Jarrett Garantano, who transferred in from Tennessee. But Jayden de Laura was the starter of last year. He was just a freshman. We expect him to be the starter again in 2021. He has his top 2 pass catchers coming back in Renard Bell and Travell Harris. They averaged 254.8 passing yards per game last year. That was 3rd in the conference. They can be even better in 2021. When you look at the defense, guys, that's the area that needs the most amount of work for the Cougars. 7 starters are back. This was a unit that gave up 38.5 points per game in those 4 games they played, and they allowed 307 passing yards per game, one of the worst in the entire country. They have to improve in the secondary, and that starts with Daniel Isom. Had 32 tackles last year. It's a very senior-led secondary. He's going to lead that. And up front, they have Brennan Jackson at defensive end. This Washington State defense as a whole should take a major step forward. Not saying that they're going to be a top defense in the Pac-12, but enough that if they can fix some things, maybe pull off a few upsets, could get to the postseason in 2021. So we take a look at their schedule, guys. It's not necessarily easy. Look at it. USC out of the South, at Utah, at Oregon, at Washington, at Arizona State. So many difficult games on this schedule for a coach that's entering his 2nd year, but some could even say it's just his 1st year because it's the first real season that Rolovich has in Pullman. And let's keep in mind, too, this is a young Washington State team. But we take a look at their schedule. They open up against Utah State at home. Now, the Aggies are dealing with a brand new head coach themselves in Blake Anderson, coming over from Arkansas State. But Utah State was an absolute dumpster fire in 2020. Averaged just 15.5 points per game, 135.8 passing yards per game, and they allowed 35.2 points per game and allowed 224.7 rushing yards per game. So Max Borghi, the running back for Washington State, could have a big day against the Aggies. They'll improve under Blake Anderson. Not enough to beat the Cougars. Washington State is 1-0. We believe they'll beat Portland State as well. So just like that, they're 2-0 and have already doubled last year's win total. Again, we'll take all that with a grain of salt. They then start Pac-12 conference play. And they open up against USC in Pullman. So lucky they're getting them at home. USC, as we all know, is a favorite in the Pac-12 this year. Oregon, the overall favorite, but USC could very well win the South if they can beat Arizona State. But you look at the Trojans, guys, they run an air raid offense. Graham Harrell, as offensive coordinator in LA, is doing a phenomenal job with Keaton Slovis, an offense that's averaging 319.3 passing yards per game, and a defense that improved drastically under Todd Orlando last year, ranking in the top 4 in the conference in all statistical categories. USC returned 6 starters on defense. They beat the Cougars 38-13 in 2020. I know a lot's changed, but more so has changed for USC, I think, than Washington State. We're going to give the Trojans the edge here. The offense simply is too good going up against the defense, and the Cougars, as we mentioned, has a lot of work to do, especially in that secondary. They then travel on the road to take on Utah. And this should have been an extra conference win for Nick Rolovich of Washington State last year. The Cougars led Utah 28-7 at halftime. They led by 21 points at halftime, but lost to the Utes 45-28. So they were outscored 38-0 in that second half. And now you look at this game, it's in Salt Lake City. Utah not only won by 17 last year, but now returns 18 starters. 18 starters, and landed a very solid transfer quarterback in Charlie Brewer from Baylor. So they do not have quarterback questions. They do not have running back questions. And the defense is always so strong under Kyle Whittingham. They return 8 starters on that side of the ball. In Salt Lake City, based on last year's results, based on how good this Utah team is, I think you're going to see a very similar result to last year. Utah's winning by double digits, but Washington State never holding a double-digit lead. Second straight loss for Nick Rolovich and the Cougars. They then travel to California. Now you look at California, guys, this is a team that last year we thought could possibly challenge Oregon for the North had there been a real normal college football season. We picked California to beat Oregon in the regular season. They did, but it didn't matter because the Golden Bears went just 1-3. But the good thing for California and Justin Wilcox is they have the most experienced quarterback in the conference, and that is Chase Garbers. The one thing that's kind of held California back under Wilcox so far has been their offense. He's a defensive-minded coach. The defense is always solid for the Golden Bears, but when were they going to be able to find the offense to really take off and maybe take that next step in the conference? That could be this year. They returned 8 starters. Garbers is back, 23 starts to his name. If he stays healthy, California's offense is going to be rolling. We know on defense they're always going to be solid. They have 4 starters back there, and their secondary is going to be one of their strengths. We know that Washington State wants to throw the ball. They're on the road against a strong secondary, against a balanced offense in California. I just don't like the Cougars' odds here against a very well-coached team in California. I believe the Golden Bears get this win, and the Cougars have now dropped 3 straight games. They are 2-3. Heading into a home date against Oregon State. And let's keep in mind, too, guys, this 3-game stretch that they lose, they're not going to be favored in any of these games. They're not. They're playing a South favorite in USC, then back-to-back road games against 2 very solid teams in Utah and Cal. None of those games are cupcakes. None of those games are easy by any means. So 2-3, then they play Oregon State. Well, last year, Nick Rolovich got off to a great debut in Pullman. They beat Oregon State on the road, 38-28. That was a lone win for Washington State in 2020. So they were able to beat Oregon State on the road, right, by 10. Let's do that, 10. First game of the year. Well, now Oregon State loses Jamar Jefferson, who was their workhorse on offense, their star running back, one of the best players in Oregon State football history. He's now gone. So I'm not too confident in Oregon State's rushing attack right now. They have quarterback questions, whether it's Tristan Gebbia, could be Chance Nolan, could be Sam Neuer, who transferred in from Colorado. This is the Oregon State team that now could rely a little bit more heavily on the pass, which does not bode well for Washington State. This is also an Oregon State team that, like Washington State, has a very shaky defense. 7 starters back on that side of the ball, but allowed over 33 points per game last year. Like Washington State, everything relies on their defense for Oregon State. The way their season goes will be based on how their defense plays. I don't have a lot of faith in their defense in 2021. At home, needing to get a big-time conference win, needing to get back on track, I believe that Washington State exploits this defense and does beat the Beavers. Again, if they can beat them by 10 last year on the road with a better Oregon State team that I think they're going to have this year, why can't they win them now in Pullman? They win that. They then return home to take on Stanford, or stay at home to take on Stanford. And Stanford's a tough team to pick this year, guys. They have been a very tough team to analyze. No one knows what to expect from them. The offense seemed to get clicking, seemed to get going towards the end of the year. They won their final 4 games, but Davis Mills is now gone at quarterback, which means that Jack West is going to have to step in and play some solid football. I'm not very sure if he's capable of that. I have my doubts. We know Stanford's defense will be very strong, especially their back 7, that linebacking core, and their secondary. But the offense, if they continue to sputter, an offense that averages just 132.8 rushing yards per game, that makes me worry a little bit. It makes me worry for any team that Stanford has to go up against. Not in a good way. I believe that Washington State defeats the Cardinal at home. Back-to-back home victories for Nick Rolovich. They're on the right side of 500, sitting at 4-3. Stanford's going to be very inconsistent this year. They're going to beat some teams that they shouldn't. They're going to lose to some teams that they shouldn't. And this might be one of those games where they lose to a team that the Cardinals shouldn't lose to, but the inconsistency on offense will ultimately be their downfall. The Cougars stay at home and take on another Cougar team. So they get 3 straight home games. They're now taking on BYU. If you remember last year, BYU was an 11-win team. They were a good football team. But they're not going to put up the same numbers that they did in 2020 in 2021. They lose Zach Wilson. They lose their big-time guys on the offensive line. 3, I believe, starters on the offensive line. They lose Dax Milne. They lose so much on the defensive side of the ball. There's no way that BYU replicates the 2020 success this season. But just because they're not going to replicate that success does not mean that they're going to fall off the face of the earth. Baylor Romney or Jaron Hall can fill in perfectly for Zach Wilson at quarterback. We know that. Tyler Algier can do just fine at the running back position. And the defense is going to get better week in and week out. And the fact that Washington State plays them so late in the year, towards the end of October, I believe Kalani Sitake's defense will finally be hitting their groove a little bit. And in a game that could determine if BYU goes bowling or not, considering how difficult their schedule is, I believe the Cougars do come on the road and get this win. I believe they have what it takes to get this win, and the offense can exploit this Washington State defense. The Cougars then go on the road. First time they've been on the road since October 2nd, bookending the month. They travel to Arizona State. For many, the Pac-12 South favorite. Now, right as of this filming, we know nothing about the recruiting violations that Arizona State has committed. We do not know what punishments they'll receive that could ultimately change our prediction for the Sun Devils. But even if they get hit hard, I'm not quite sure the Sun Devils are going to lose this game to the Cougars. Regardless, we do believe Washington State drops this game. Jaden Daniels is back as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Yes, Arizona State only played 4 games, but they averaged over 260 rushing yards per game in those 4 games. They had the number 1 scoring defense in the Pac-12 last year, and I do believe that they are the Pac-12 South favorite. They should be the South favorite, and I do believe they'll beat Washington State. So they've now dropped back-to-back games. They get their bye week and they take on Oregon. So in a way, they are facing the South favorite, get a bye week, and then they're playing the North favorite, the Pac-12 favorite as a whole in Oregon. And go ahead and chalk it up as a loss, guys. No disrespect to Washington State, because we do know that they led by 12 at one point last year against Oregon. We do know they hung with the Ducks for a while before ultimately falling to them 43-29. But Oregon as a whole is the most complete team, I believe, in this conference. The RPO offense with Joe Moorhead leading the way, Anthony Brown at quarterback, Travis Dye, CJ Burdell, their top 2 pass catchers. And on defense, 7 starters back, led by one of the best defensive linemen in the country in Kayvon Thibodeau. I just don't know if anybody can beat Oregon in the Pac-12 this year. It's going to be very, very tough. The Cougars are not going to be the team to take them down, especially not in Eugene. They dropped their 3rd straight game. In that streak, though, with a win against Arizona, kind of like Oregon, can anybody beat the Ducks? The question for Arizona is, can the Wildcats beat anybody themselves? They are, without a doubt, the worst team in the Pac-12 this year. They are in the worst position of any team in the conference this year. 0-5 last year, new head coach in Jed Fish, more than likely going to be starting a freshman quarterback, taking over a defense that allowed 39.8 points per game, allowed 270.6 rushing yards per game. Arizona has a lot of work to do, and it's going to take a while to climb out of the cellar. At home in Pullman on senior night, Washington State wins this game. Which means, if you've been following us, they have 5 wins going into the Apple Cup against Washington. Which means that game against Washington determines if the Cougars go bowling or not. Well, unfortunately for Washington State, they have not had very much success against their in-state rivals. Playing Washington, they've lost 7 straight games to the Huskies. They've lost 10 of the last 11 games to the Huskies. And this begins a new era of the Apple Cup. For a while, we saw Mike Leach going up against Chris Peterson. Now it's Jimmy Lake at Washington and Nick Rolovich here at Washington State. Two different styles, two different coaches, and different cultures, everything. Everything's changing in the state of Washington, the state of college football. But the one thing that's not going to change is the winner of the Apple Cup. We do believe that Washington wins this game. I believe Nick Rolovich can get them there, can start being a little bit more competitive, because for the last few years, they haven't even been competitive Apple Cups to begin with. This game will be close for a while, but Washington's defense is ultimately the difference maker. They shut down Jaden DeLaura, and the Huskies' offense gets better week in and week out. That's the only major concern I have for them. They'll be in good shape by season's end. They win their 8th straight Apple Cup and keep the Cougars home for the holidays as they finish 5-7. So guys, as always, thank you for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, including those expert picks on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Make sure to sign up for those before the season starts. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.